When you think about your body, you probably think of it as, well, yours. But what if I told you it's also an entire ecosystem, a walking planet, home to trillions of tiny organisms? The thing is, not all of them are friendly neighbors. Today, we're taking a journey deep inside to meet the hijackers, the squatters, the unseen invaders we call human parasites. All right, let's get right into it.
Just to give you a sense of the sheer scale of what we're up against, let's start with a number. 249 million. That's how many cases of malaria there were in a single year. That's not just a statistic, that's a massive global health crisis caused by one of the smallest, deadliest hijackers on the planet. And that's just one parasite. So here's our plan, our roadmap for this internal expedition. First, we'll get to know these invaders. Then, we're diving into their favorite hangouts, starting with the gut. After that, we'll catch a ride in the bloodstream, then explore the really scary places they can end up. And finally, and this is the important part, we'll talk about how we fight back. All right, part 1, the unseen invaders. So what is a parasite really? Well, simply put, it's any organism that sets up camp in or on a host, that's us, and gets all its meals at our expense. They are absolute masters of survival, and they've come up with some incredibly clever ways to get inside our bodies. So how do they breach our defenses? Think of it like 4 main superhighways into the body. The most common one is just swallowing them. They have this tough, dormant form called a cyst that can hang out in contaminated food or water. Others use a taxi service, hitching a ride inside a biting insect. Some are so bold they just burrow right through your skin. And others, they just wait patiently for you in that undercooked steak. And that brings us right to our first stop on this tour, the intestinal tract. This is the front line. This is ground zero. It's the most common entry point for these kinds of infections. Okay, to really get a grip on gut parasites, we've got to talk about something called the fecal-oral route. And yeah, it's exactly as gross as it sounds. Basically, parasite cysts that are passed in an infected person's feces end up contaminating water or food or someone's hands, and then somebody else ingests them. And just like that, the whole nasty cycle starts all over again. Let's follow the life of a really common one, Giardia, to see exactly how this works. Step 1. You drink some contaminated water and swallow a cyst. Inside your small intestine, it hatches into its active, moving form. These little critters then use a tiny sucking disc to latch onto the walls of your intestine, where they start multiplying like crazy and causing all sorts of digestive chaos. Then, they form new cysts, which exit the body, ready to find a new host. But here's a really important point. Not all gut parasites play by the same rules. Take Giardia. Its infection usually causes, well, really unpleasant fatty stools, but not typically any blood. Then you have something like Entamoeba histolytica. It's way more aggressive. In fact, its name literally means tissue dissolving. It chews ulcers into your intestinal lining, leading to severe, bloody dysentery. 2 very different intruders. Okay, so that covers getting sick from contaminated water or just bad hygiene. But what about from your dinner plate? What happens when the invader comes from the food we eat?
Yep, this is another huge pathway. Parasites like Toxoplasma and Cercocystis build these little protective cysts for themselves right in the muscle tissue of animals. If we eat that meat without cooking it properly, those cysts can survive and, you guessed it, infect us. And it's not just meat you have to worry about. Even something as healthy-sounding as watercress can carry parasites like the liver fluke if it was grown in contaminated water.
All right, we're leaving the gut behind now and diving deeper. We're about to enter the body's busiest superhighway, the bloodstream. And here, we're going to meet the parasites that can travel literally anywhere our blood flows.
And the scale of this is just mind-blowing. Let's just take one example, filariasis. This is a disease caused by tiny thread-like worms. Right now, about 140 million people are infected. But get this, 1.3 billion people are at risk. That's nearly 1 in 5 people on the entire planet. So how do these things even get into our blood in the first place? Well, they can't just walk in. They need a ride. They use what scientists call vectors, insects that act as the taxis of the parasite world. The mosquito is obviously the most famous one, carrying malaria and the worms that cause elephantiasis. But you've also got tsetse flies, sandflies, and even chrysops flies, and that last one carries a particularly nasty passenger. So let's put 2 of these passengers side by side.
On one hand, you have Wuchereria bancrofti, delivered by a mosquito. It heads for the lymphatic system and over time can cause that condition we mentioned, elephantiasis. On the other hand, you have Loa loa, delivered by a chrysops fly. It has a totally different destination. It likes to cruise around just under your skin and sometimes, and you might want to brace yourself for this, right across the surface of your eye. And that horrifying image leads us to the final and maybe the most unsettling part of our journey: the tissue travelers. These are the parasites that aren't content with the gut or the blood. Oh no, they invade our muscles, our organs, and yep, even our brains.
Let's just take a moment and zoom in on that one we just met, Loa loa. Its common name pretty much says it all, doesn't it? The African eye worm.
Now, I found this quote in a medical textbook, and it has to be the biggest understatement of all time. Can cause anxiety. I mean, can you imagine seeing a living, wriggling worm crawling across your field of vision? I think sheer abject terror might be a bit more accurate, don't you? It's a terrifying reality for the people infected with it. And some of these tissue travelers are even sneakier because they play the long game. Take Toxoplasma gondii, the one we mentioned from undercooked meat and cat feces. It doesn't always cause symptoms right away. Instead, it forms these little dormant cysts that can just sit there, waiting for years. And where do they wait? In critical places like the brain, muscles, the liver, and even in our eyes. And that long-term damage can be absolutely devastating. Remember those filarial worms like Wuchereria bancrofti? When they live in your lymphatic system for years and years, they cause chronic inflammation that blocks up the whole system. The fluid can't drain, and that leads to the massive, disfiguring, and totally disabling swelling that we know as elephantiasis.
Okay, I know. After all of that, it's easy to feel a little, well, helpless, maybe even a bit paranoid. But the story does not end there. We are not defenseless. So for our final section, let's talk about how we fight back.
The number one rule, the absolute best defense we have, is prevention. And the great news is, it isn't rocket science. It's actually pretty straightforward. Cooking your meat to 66 degrees Celsius kills those tissue cysts. Sleeping under a mosquito net protects you from the vectors. Making sure your water is safe to drink and just practicing good hygiene, like washing your hands and your food, breaks that fecal-oral cycle. These simple actions are incredibly powerful. And for those times when prevention isn't enough, we still have hope. Modern medicine has given us a whole arsenal of effective antiparasitic drugs. Names like albendazole, ivermectin, and praziquantel. These medications are absolute game changers. They can kill the invaders, stop the disease in its tracks, and save literally millions of lives. So that leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? Parasites have been our unwanted companions throughout all of human history. This is an ancient battle. But today, we live in a world where a person, or a mosquito, can fly across the planet in a day, and where a changing climate is literally redrawing the map of where these diseases can thrive. It makes you wonder if our ancient battle against these unseen invaders is really just beginning?